Introduced as one of the foundational members of the Fantastic Four, Dr. Susan Sue Storm Richards has been one of the most iconic characters in Marvel Comics. She was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby for the Fantastic Four comics all the way back in 1961, and she's also known by her alias, Invisible Woman. While she had a regular life as a college student, things took a turn for her when she was exposed to cosmic radiation that triggered a mutation that turned her invisible. She also gained the ability to create force fields, and her powers have shaped her to be one of the strongest characters among the Fantastic Four. Today, we'll be exploring her origins and history, and tell you everything about her physiological features and powers. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Sue Storm, and how did she get her powers? Sue had quite a traumatic childhood after her mother, Mary Storm, died in a car accident on Long Island, and she lived with her younger brother, Johnny. To make things worse, their father, Dr. Franklin Storm, could not cope with the fact that he failed to save his wife's life, and he soon turned to gambling and alcohol abuse. As he lost all their savings and even ended up in trouble after accidentally murdering a loan shark, Sue and Johnny were sent to live with Aunt Dinkins at her boarding house. After spending several years there, Sue fell for one of the lodgers, Reed Richards, who is currently working on a doctorate degree at Empire State University. Over time, the two of them moved to California, and Sue tried her hand in show business with very little success. Meanwhile, Reed had started working on an experimental rocket ship that could travel to a planet called Spire, situated about 44 light years away from Earth. After the government stopped funding him, Reed launched the ship's prototype on his own and came up with a plan to fly it and grab the attention he needed to secure more funding. Sue also signed up to accompany him, alongside Johnny and a test pilot named Ben Grimm. As they launched the ship, they ended up passing through a storm of cosmic rays before crash landing on Earth. Moreover, the level of radiation that they were exposed to resulted in them gaining superpowers, and they soon rebranded themselves as a superhero team, the Fantastic Four. Sue adopted an alias as Invisible Girl and created quite a legacy as one of the most powerful entities in the world of comics. What was Sue's role in the early Fantastic Four era? When the Fantastic Four first came together, Sue had to work quite hard to ensure that the team stayed together, even though the other members had other priorities. She would deal with Reed spending hours in the laboratory and Grimm complaining over his appearance, while also dealing with Johnny's tantrums. She also did not find much use for her invisibility powers in battles against Dr. Doom and Galactus, but she was quite emotionally intelligent, and she managed to talk many superheroes out of making misguided decisions. Sue was also briefly attracted to Neymar, but this didn't affect her loyalty towards Reed Richards, her longtime partner and teammate. She also discovered that she had other powers, such as the ability to project and manipulate force fields, and one of the key highlights of her early career was the Fantastic Four's fight against Super Skrull. When Super Skrull captured and impersonated Sue's father, Franklin, Sue had to witness her father sacrifice his own life to save them. She then traveled to the Skrull homeworld to kill Warlord Morat, the Skrull who had orchestrated her father's murder. How did motherhood change Sue Storm? After dating Reed for a long time, the two of them got married in a ceremony attended by every major superhero in the Marvel Universe. Soon enough, she was pregnant, and the Fantastic Four even had to visit the Negative Zone to save the child during some complications. Finally, she had a son and named him Franklin after her father, and realized that the baby had unusually strong powers right from birth. When Alias kidnapped Franklin, he had him turned into a living bomb to ensure that his powers would grow exponentially to a point where he might just wipe out all life in the universe. At great risk of losing their child, Reed decided that he had no option but to inhibit his son's higher brain functions and diffuse the features that had turned him into a living bomb. This was too much for Sue to process, and she soon left the team with her son while the inhuman Medusa filled in for her. Over time, she returned to the team and got back with Reed after Franklin returned to his usual self. The two of them also went back to the Negative Zone to take a second honeymoon, which ended with her being pregnant with another child. To ensure that this child is safe from any villains, they moved to the Connecticut suburbs under a new identity as the Benjamins, but unfortunately, this child was stillborn. Over time, Sue returned to work with the Fantastic Four and was even possessed by the symbiote, who hoped to get its hands on Franklin. Thankfully, their son was able to reject the symbiote with some help from Reed and Spider-Man, and Sue then returned to normal. What happened when Sue became Malice? At one point in her story arc, Psycho Man used Sue's weak self-control to amplify her negative feelings and transform her into Malice. She then tried to attack her team and eventually snapped out of it to get rid of Psycho Man, but the incident had a long-lasting effect on her psyche. Invisible Girl even changed her name to Invisible Woman and learned how to use force objects, but deep down, she knew that some part of Malice had stayed deep inside her. She decided to leave the Fantastic Four for some time, and she then joined the Avengers with Mr. Fantastic. They embarked on side quests to help the Silver Surfer bring Galactus back to life, when Sue came in touch with the Infinity Gems and assumed her alter ego as Malice. However, the in-betweener eventually managed to send Malice back into Sue's subconscious, and she then returned to the Fantastic Four during the Infinity War. She continued to battle against Malice, who resurfaced from time to time, while Reed's father, Nathaniel, feared for Franklin's future. He took the kid with him into the future and raised him to be a warrior, who finally returned in time as a teenage hero, Psylord. In an inevitable face-off, Psylord used his psychic powers to absorb Malice's essence and ensure that it does not haunt Sue ever again. When did Sue lead the Fantastic Four? After Reed had allegedly been killed by Victor Von Doom, Sue assumed his role as the Fantastic Four's leader and even asked Ant-Man to replace Reed. She had a hard time getting rid of suitors, such as Neymar, and continued to look for her husband until she finally found him trapped in the past. Unfortunately, they had trouble reconciling, as Reed had become quite paranoid after being isolated in the past, while Sue had grown into a confident and enigmatic leader. However, Reed soon snapped back into his past self when Neymar tried to assault Sue, and the team was back together in no time. The reunion didn't last for long, as they apparently died during their fight against Onslaught, and soon found themselves in a pocket universe called Counter-Earth. It was revealed that Franklin had created this dimension to save them from being permanently destroyed, and they managed to return to their home reality once they realized what had happened. What did Sue do in Future Foundation and Secret Wars? After Johnny Storm's death, Spider-Man replaced the Human Torch while the team rebranded itself as the Future Foundation. To make things worse, Reed Richards from another universe wreaked havoc on Earth 616, and Sue then worked with Reed to recruit the Avengers, the New Avengers, the Future Foundation, and many superheroes to fight against Atalan. Just when these heroes were leaving for the battleground, a Kree army launched an attack on New York, and Sue then combined her powers with Iron Man's armor to create a gigantic force field over Manhattan. Unfortunately, the force field was soon broken, and the Cult of the Negative Zone even broke into the Baxter Building to open the Negative Zone portal. In a shocking turn of events, the portal opened and revealed that Johnny Storm was still alive and that he had even captured Alias. Johnny then brought the team together by firing a symbolic 4 in the sky, which prompted Sue and the Future Foundation to board one of the Annihilation Wave's ships. Johnny had complete control over these ships, and they used them to fight against the Kree army until the Inhumans stepped in to tackle them. Reed and Sue then directed their attention towards finding Galactus in the hopes that he would destroy the Kree warriors, and a futuristic version of Franklin helped them heal Galactus and destroy the Mad Celestials. In the aftermath of this battle, Mr. Fantastic established a new headquarters known as the Foundation, and the Fantastic Four rebranded themselves with new costumes. During the Secret Wars storyline, Sue worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. under the pretense of capturing the fugitive team, but the entire time she was sharing information with Reed so that he could help the Illuminati escape. In one of their final missions, Sue even made a life raft with some help from the Future Foundation to escape the death of the universe, but it malfunctioned at the last minute and resulted in Sue and Reed's family's death. However, Reed managed to resurrect them after gaining Beyonder's powers in Battleworld, and Sue once again became a part of the Future Foundation's attempts to rebuild the multiverse. What happened in the fate of the Four? Several years in the future, Franklin lost his ability to create new realities around the same time that they had to fight against the abstract creature, the Griever, at the end of all things. The Griever had managed to destroy innumerable universes, and Mr. Fantastic then tricked her into summoning the rest of the Fantastic Four. They were soon able to defeat her, and the Future Foundation continued its multiversal adventures while Sue and Reed returned to Earth with Franklin, Ben, Johnny, and Valeria. They realized launched the Fantastic Four and embarked on their original mission to reach the planet Spire, where they fought against the Unparalleled. It was soon revealed that the Spirians had followed their adventures all along, and their patriarch, the Overseer, even revealed that he had sent the cosmic storm that gave them their powers in the first place. What are Sue Storm's most powerful abilities? Sue Storm gained her powers from the vibrational energies of the higher dimension known as hyperspace, but she restrained herself from using them to their full potential. Hyperstorm even stated that she had barely scratched the surface and that she could even create or destroy entire universes if she ever decided to unleash the entirety of her powers. One of her core powers lay in her ability to turn invisible by manipulating cosmic energy, and she could also perform this feat to turn other objects invisible as well. She could also conjure invisible force fields, and it was said that cosmic energy interacted with her bodily cells in a way that she could cause all forms of light to bend around her and render her invisible. She can also project the invisible energy produced by her bodily cells to turn at least 40,000 cubic feet of volume invisible, and she once made an invisible hole the size of the moon while being trapped within the Human Torch's body. Sue's powers made her capable of turning a whole negative zone planet invisible, or even driving parasitic bacteria extinct by bending sunlight away from them and depriving them of nourishment. Sue could use her powers creatively to sometimes turn several parts of her body invisible, and she also had a sharp radar for detecting other invisible people and objects. She also had the ability to manipulate electromagnetic spectra to disrupt or create illusions, bend sunlight, avoid electromagnetic spectrum-based sensors, or switch up light frequencies. She could also induce temporary blindness in people by turning their optic waves and retinas invisible and manipulating light waves to manipulate color, such as when she turned the Thing pink or tweaked her hair color. Sue's retinas were also interpolated shapes designed to perceive cosmic rays and invisible force fields, giving her a form of cosmic awareness. How dangerous can Sue be with internal force fields? Sue had the ability to create internal force fields within her opponent's bodies, which could crush their windpipes, fill up their lungs, or even result in the creation of force spikes that could pierce through their hearts. In one such instance, she compressed MODOK's brainstem, pressed nerves in Spot's face, and even threatened Wizard with a thrombosis heart attack by blocking his arteries. Even though she rarely resorted to using this ability, she was capable of rendering her opponent's brain dead by placing force fields in their brains or triggering heart attacks. Can Sue block telepathy and manipulate energy? Sue's great power lay in her ability to create psionic hyperspace force fields that were far more potent than regular energy waves. By focusing on a target, she could project invisible force fields that were powered by hyperspace, and she could even shape them into planes, cylinders, globes, or other such forms. These shapes were only restricted by her ability to visualize her form and retain concentration, and they would start to fall apart as soon as she lost focus. The shape, size, and number of psionic projections were also limited by her imagination, which meant that the sky was the limit when she decided to unleash her full potential. She could project force fields as small as 1 millimeter to block blood vessels or pressurize nerves, or as big as 100 feet to create large-scale force projections. She could also manipulate energy to turn small objects into high-speed missiles, or even create weapons out of nothing but force field projections. Sue could also project these psionic energy forces to float through the air by projecting a flat force field under her feet and then concentrating on making it levitate. These force fields could carry up to 100 times their weight, and she could float at about 25 miles per hour with 3 or 4 people with her on the same structure. These force fields were also constructed out of intangible energy forces as opposed to solid matter, making her invulnerable to her opponent's matter manipulation techniques. She could also use them to prevent incoming telekinesis attacks from the likes of Gan Gray or Psylord, and it's safe to say that she was capable of blocking telepathy. Even the most accomplished superheroes with psychic powers were unable to penetrate through her force field to read her mind or direct telepathic attacks at her, and Sue could even redirect these attacks right back at the user. Her projections could also interact with gravity and other such forces and nullify their effects, in addition to detecting and redirecting other psionic forces in her vicinity. Over time, Sue has gained the ability to make her force fields stronger or weaker, or tweak features such as their resilience or rigidity. Currently, her force fields can withstand impacts up to Class 100 strength, which simply means they are unaffected by attacks by entities as strong as the Mad Celestials or Galactus. She can also create and manipulate several psionic force fields at once, and even turn them into shockwaves that can directly attack her opponents. Another useful application of her force field abilities involves emitting low-level waves from her body that act as a radar to detect nearby people or objects. What are Sue Storm's biggest weaknesses? Even though Sue was one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, she had to concentrate on her target victim or objects to ensure that the force field around them continued to exist. The second she lost her concentration, she could no longer maintain these force fields. Moreover, her force fields were also permeable to sound waves, as proven by Songbird's ability to manifest a sound construct that penetrated her force field and knocked her unconscious. She was also connected to the Fantastic Four, and they shared a synergy wherein their powers slowly decreased and even went away if they were separated for extended periods of time. What are Sue Storm's academic and leadership skills? While Reed Richards is often considered to be the smartest hero on the Fantastic Four team, Sue Storm was also highly intellectual. She had a doctorate degree in archaeology and was quite knowledgeable in subjects such as linguistics, history, biology, genetics, diplomatic relations, and cultural studies. She could also tweak her powers so that they could be used for medical purposes, and she displayed great technological skills while exploring different timelines, dimensions, and planets. Sue had great knowledge of complex sciences, in addition to being emotionally intelligent, and she once even worked as a substitute teacher. Her emotional intellect also contributed towards keeping the Fantastic Four team together on more than one occasion, and she was even capable of working as an espionage agent who had managed to hide secrets from her highly accomplished husband. She also filled in as the Fantastic Four's leader, and eventually assumed the leadership role in the Future Foundation, where she guided and mentored some of the most gifted children in the Marvel Universe. How skilled is Sue in combat and espionage? Sue was trained in judo by her husband, and she underwent several weeks of training in bojutsu by Iron Fist. She was capable of holding her own in unarmed one-on-one combat, in addition to being proficient in martial arts, and she also underwent intensive shield training while secretly working with them as a spy. As an undercover spy, she was trained in covert operations, asset extraction, stealth maneuvers, surveillance, and close combat, and she had garnered years of experience in espionage while embarking on these high-risk missions. This experience also helped her gain on-field experience in political and psychological manipulation, field strategy, and so on. And she was so skilled in espionage that the rest of the Fantastic Four team did not even get a whiff of her affiliation with S.H.I.E.L.D. Who wins in a Marvel fight? Jean Grey versus Sue Storm? No, Phoenix, both at peak. In a fight where Jean Grey operates at her peak power, Sue Storm would only stand a chance against her if she struck first and caught Jean off guard. If Sue were to immediately knock Jean out by creating a force field in her body, Jean would have been completely incapacitated and unable to strike back. However, Sue's odds were nearly not half as strong if she failed to get the first strike, as Jean would use her telekinesis to knock Sue out. Jean's telekinesis would also allow her to see right through Sue's invisibility, and even though Sue was strong-willed, she would have trouble fighting back against Jean's psychic attacks. There's no doubt that both Sue and Jean are highly enigmatic forces of nature, but Sue's chances of winning highly rely on her ability to catch Jean off guard and blow her up using an internal force field before the latter even gets an opportunity to use her psychic powers. Did Sue Storm cheat with Neymar? Even though Sue seemed to have some chemistry with Neymar, she never acted on her impulses and remained loyal to her long-term partner and husband, Reed Richards. There's no doubt that Sue liked Neymar and found him attractive, but it was not enough to see him as a romantic interest. Instead, she viewed him as a friend and relied on him for emotional support whenever Reed was too distracted by his work to give her the attention she desired. However, Reed did realize this and come around, which made Sue feel quite content with their relationship. Some would even say that Sue only indulged in Neymar's advances to make Reed jealous and get him to understand that he had to start treating her better. Additionally, Neymar's character has been written quite inconsistently over the ages, and he stated that he would stop chasing Sue after she married Reed in the comics. Over time, different writers continued to write him as a character who actively tries to get with Sue even after her marriage, but Bendis eventually rectified this by writing a scene where Neymar advises Reed to dedicate more of his time towards Sue and their children. Has Sue's force field ever been broken? Even though Sue's powers virtually make her one of the most invulnerable beings in the Marvel Universe, her force field has been broken on a few instances. In one such instance, the Thing picked up a mystical hammer and transformed into an evil entity known as Angrier, and Sue then tried to separate him from the hammer when her force field broke apart. In the World War Hulk comics, Hulk also was able to smash through her force field to attack Mr. Fantastic despite her best attempts to block him. Finally, an older Susan Storm broke through Sue's shields in an issue of the Fantastic Four, where a much younger Sue faced an older counterpart from an alternate universe. Can Sue Storm beat Thor? According to several fans, Sue might just be able to defeat Thor in a one-on-one fight where either party could unleash their full potential. At the end of the day, Sue's powers are far more enhanced than what we see, and the only thing holding her back is her morals. She could be one of the most dangerous entities in the Marvel Universe and easily go around blowing her enemies' brains out by creating internal force fields in their bodies. Thor would be no exception, and Sue was able to defeat villains and heroes on the same level as him in the past. She has once even defeated the Avengers by manipulating the electromagnetic fields around them, and if the situation arose, she is more than capable of beating Thor. However, this would result in quite a fatal attack on Thor's life, and realistically, Sue's morals would prevent her from taking such a drastic step against one of the mightiest heroes in the Marvel Universe. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we've explored Invisible Woman's anatomy, origins, history, and some of her most fascinating powers. She is undoubtedly one of the most powerful superheroes in the history of Marvel Comics, and she's created quite a legacy as one of the founding members of the Fantastic Four. Even though Sue has shown great restraint when it comes to unleashing her full potential, she has stirred up a whole lot of trouble for supervillains all across the Marvel Universe, and kept them in check on more than one occasion. We hope you enjoyed exploring her story with us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.